The Negro Motorist Green Book audio journey of the exhibit at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. Introduction. Welcome to an audio tour featuring highlights from the Negro Motorist Green Book exhibit at the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. This exhibit runs from November 2, 2024 to March 2, 2025. The Negro Motorist Green Book was created by the Smithsonian Institution Traveling Exhibition Service in collaboration with award-winning author, photographer, and cultural documentarian Candacy Taylor, and made possible through the generous support of Exxon Mobil Corporation. The Arts and Exhibits program is made possible partly through the generous support of the D.C. Public Library Foundation. Green Book in D.C. was made possible in part by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Movement is freedom. History and context of the Green Book. During the decades before the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when much of America was strictly segregated and travel for black people could be dangerous, there was a need for a guide to safe travel. After all, movement is freedom. This exhibit tells that story. I will be describing some of the photographs and objects in the exhibit and using some of the language from the signage in telling the story of the Green Book and the America it both described and changed. The exhibit starts in the Great Hall of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. Let us begin with an introduction to the significance of the Negro Motorist Green Book in the history of the times it was used. By the 1930s, the American road was a metaphor for freedom. It offered the freedom to change your present situation, freedom to determine your destiny, freedom to travel. Yet in 20th century America, this same road was a dangerous place for black citizens. The land was divided by segregation, by government policy, and by custom. If you were black, the prejudice was severe, a systematic effort to deny access to your basic human rights. In 1896, the Supreme Court had held in Plessy v. Ferguson that separate and supposedly equal treatment of black people was all that the Constitution required. That enabled states to enact what were called Jim Crow laws, a term derived from a derogatory term for African Americans in minstrel shows. Jim Crow laws supposedly mandated separate but equal treatment for African Americans, but in practice they led to inferior treatment and facilities. The laws affected almost every aspect of daily life, including buses, trains, and restaurants, prohibition of intermarriage, literacy tests in order to vote applied in ways that prevented the vast majority of black individuals from voting, and restrictive laws in property documents that barred African Americans from many neighborhoods. Imagine the indignity of government-backed and socially normalized oppression. Imagine the pain, the violence, the disrespect. And yet and still, African Americans created destinations and strategies that affirmed their humanity, their worth, their light, their lives, and took to the roads. It was done with ingenuity, with community, and with the help of a man named Victor Green and his travel guide, the Negro Motorist Green Book. The Green Book guided black Americans to thousands of businesses for over 30 years. Between 1936 and 1967, the guide provided an annual listing of businesses that offered black citizens dignity and respect in segregated America. There were over 10,000 businesses or associations advertised within the Green Book. Though only a fraction of those sites can be shown in this exhibition, think of them as symbols of the many that once stood. When you traveled with the Green Book, you found community wherever you went, and black citizens coming together to eat, dance, talk, shop, and relax. The Green Book pointed the way to a black experience not yet in the mainstream horizon, but nevertheless real, alive, and thriving. Victor Green and the birth of the Green Book. Who was Victor Green, and how did the Green Book come to be? Victor Hugo Green lived in Harlem, New York, with his wife Alma. Until his retirement in 1952, Victor Green was a full-time letter carrier for the U.S. Postal Service 5 days a week. He had a 7th grade education, but was an elegant and impressive man in person. In the 1930s, Victor Green was inspired by a book a Jewish friend shared called Jewish Vacation Guide, that Jewish travelers used to find Jewish-friendly food, travel, and entertainment locations in the Borscht Belt, the vacation mecca in the Catskills. Green said, "This would be great for black people. We need a book like this." The Negro Motorist Green Book was first published in 1936. The book was called the Green Book, the Negro Traveler's Green Book, and the Traveler's Green Book over its 30-year existence. Green enlisted his fellow postmen to contact black entrepreneurs along their routes and invite them to list in the Green Book and sell the guide to travelers. Early in the exhibition, there is a large black and white headshot photo of Victor Green, slightly smiling and wearing a dark suit and light-colored shirt and tie. Underneath this photo is a glass display case of Green's typewriter and tortoiseshell-colored fountain writing pen, a framed photo of his wife Alma, a coffee or tea-stained teacup and saucer, and typed letters and segments of the Green Book. In 1936, black employment was the highest it had been since the Great Depression. Over 60% of black women worked as domestic servants, while others worked as seamstresses, laundresses, waitresses, and cooks. 90% earned less than $5 a week, which was less than 20% of what was required to maintain a fair standard of living. Black men found different opportunities. Mechanics could earn $25 to $50 a week, especially in the North. This allowed many to buy cars of their own. Having a car was both thrilling and useful, a gateway to humanity and a way to meet work, family, and leisure needs. One of the major problems faced by black motorists was that most businesses that sold gas and serviced cars did not welcome business from black people. The exception was Standard Oil, now Exxon Mobil, which had a nationwide system of Esso stations. John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil, was married to Laura Celestia Setti Spellman, daughter of fierce prohibitionists whose home was a stop on the Underground Railroad. The Rockefellers were intent on opening doors for black Americans. Eventually, a seminary for black women in Atlanta that was supported for many years by the Rockefellers was renamed Spelman College in honor of Laura Spelman Rockefeller. In 1934, Standard Oil hired James A. Jackson as a special representative to research the role and impact of the black consumer in America. This was revolutionary. Jackson was African American. At the time, Esso was one of the largest companies in the world, and Victor Green saw an opportunity. Green and Jackson devised a plan to distribute the guide in Esso stations across the country. In the early 40s, 312 out of 830 Esso dealers were black. More than 2,000 black men distributed kerosene for Esso, and more than 800 employees were set to receive Esso pensions. Esso also hired black people as chemists, pipeline workers, seamen, and mail clerks. There is a black and white photograph of 4 African-American men in gas service uniforms, standing side by side with their hands in their pockets and slight smiles in front of a gas station. The signs on the station say, Standard Oil Company of New Jersey, Esso Service. Ellis Marsalis Sr., jazz trumpeter Wynton Marsalis's grandfather, owned an Esso station in New Orleans. He named the station Billboard Esso after James A. Jackson, who was called Billboard because of his success as a senior editor of Billboard magazine before he was hired by Standard Oil. James Jackson gave talks throughout the country to black entrepreneurs. There is a photo of an event Esso hosted for marketing students at Howard University, which was celebrated in the 1956 edition of the Green Book. By 1956, Esso had also hired Wendell P. Alston as Jackson's assistant, and the 2 black executives traveled about 20,000 miles a year in their work. They always touted the Green Book. Women had large roles in the editing and selling of the Green Book. Alma D. Green was the head editor of the Green Book after her husband, Victor Hugo Green, died in 1960. Alma was influential in the Green Book from its inception, and the book's editorial staff was almost entirely women in its later years. Some of the women who worked on the Green Book include Novera Dashiell, assistant editor, Dorothy Ashe, advertising director, Evelyn Woolfork, sales correspondent, and Edith Green, secretary. The original Green Book in 1936 was 10 pages and covered only New York, but it grew quickly over the next decade to cover most states. By the last edition in 1966 and 1967, it was 128 pages and listed hotels, motels, restaurants, clubs, resorts, and other businesses in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. At first, it depended largely on recommendations from postal workers, but it always asked that users recommend other businesses that welcomed Black travelers, and it also took advertising promoting the businesses. The network that resulted built confidence in travel and a sense of community. Victor Green included letters from users, the occasional essay, and even humor in the Green Books. His article, How to Keep from Growing Old, included advice like, never stop, look, or listen at railroad crossings. It consumes time. And insist on half the road, the middle half. Insist on your rights. When Green began publishing annual books, the covers typically said, carry your Green Book with you. You may need it. Dignity creates community. By the 1930s, Black Americans owned nearly 70,000 small businesses. The Green Book showcased as many of them as it could throughout the 32 years that the Green Book was published. Black women's businesses blossomed and were prominent in the Green Book. Black women ran beauty shops, funeral homes, tourist residential homes, and so much more. Tourist homes, largely run by women, were the Airbnbs of their time and provided safe and welcoming accommodations when hotels and motels excluded Black travelers. Without the growth of business owned and run by women, the Green Book would have had many fewer successful listings, and without the Green Book, those businesses would not have become as successful as they were. When you traveled with the Green Book, you found community wherever you went, and Black citizens coming together to eat, dance, talk, shop, and relax. After World War II, the Black middle class grew considerably. More disposable income meant the opportunity to buy cars and to travel. In fact, the freedom the car represented and the fact that home ownership was still so difficult for Blacks due to discriminatory zoning and lending practices meant that often more was spent on the car than on the home. Black people wanted to spend money where they were respected and welcomed. Knowing where the Black-owned businesses were was important. There is a display of beauty salon equipment, hot combs to press curly hair to straight, hair pomade, a cosmetology manual, and other tools of the trade to style hair. Included is an advertisement of Madam C.J. Walker's College of Beauty Culture. Madam C.J. Walker was the first American woman to become a self-made millionaire. Her methods, including door-to-door sales and grassroots marketing tactics, informed Victor Green's approach. Significance of the North. Much of the exhibition is divided into regions, showing the examples of locations and events in the north, south, east, and west of the country. Let's start in the north. In the first half of the 20th century, over 6 million Black Americans left the South, seeking better economic opportunities and hoping to avoid the extreme racial violence they experienced in the South. But they found unexpected barriers and racism, even if expressed in more subtle ways. Home ownership was relatively rare because of redlining and other practices, and banks were generally unwilling to lend to Black businesses or to lend to women. But the Great Migration to the North did mean more entrepreneurship, especially for women. Black businesses grew in number and variety. The automobile industry was particularly important for Black men who could find work as mechanics and used car dealers and eventually broke through to sell new cars, starting with the Chrysler Corporation. Entertainment was another flourishing area throughout the North, but particularly in Harlem. In the 20s and 30s, the Harlem Renaissance saw a surge of black intellectual and artistic expression by such giants as Zora Neale Hurston, W.E.B. Du Bois, Augusta Savage, Duke Ellington, and Langston Hughes. Here is a picture of a souvenir card for the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. The card is a burnt orange color with black lettering and a silhouette of an African-American woman and man dancing together, arms swinging. The card says, "Souvenir of Savoy, the home of Happy Feet," a reference to the Lindy Hop, a dance which originated at the Savoy. The Savoy opened in 1925 and was the size of an entire city block. It was one of the first integrated clubs in Harlem, with 2 bandstands hosting stars like Benny Goodman, Thelonious Monk, and Charlie Parker. Another club founded in 1925 was Small's Paradise, one of very few owned by a black man, Edwin Alexander Smalls. It served stars including Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Bill Bojangles Robinson, Ethel Waters, and Joe Louis. In the early 1940s, Victor Green moved his operation out of his home and into an office above Small's Paradise. The area around Chicago was also critical to black progress. Robbins was one of the oldest black municipalities in the country. It was a popular recreation spot for black Chicagoans and was the home of the first black-owned airport. Cornelius Coffey, one of the founders of the airport, would go on to train some of the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black combat pilots in the U.S. military. Bronzeville was a segregated black community and center of history and culture. It was known as the Black Belt, had the first black-owned bank in Chicago, and is known for its art galleries and historic landmarks. Bronzeville was home to many influential black figures such as Gwendolyn Brooks, Richard Wright, Louis Armstrong, Bessie Coleman, Ida B. Wells, Andrew Foster, and many more. Of 180 businesses in Chicago listed in the Green Book, nearly 80% were in the Bronzeville district: manufacturing, black hair care, publishing, and banking, among others. The 1949 Green Book featured a 7-page article on Bronzeville with a full-page image of the South Center department store, which employed 200 black workers, as well as other major businesses. Victor Green proudly called these places monuments to Negro business. There is a marvelous photo of a small group of African Americans outside Pilgrim Baptist Church, Bronzeville, Chicago, Illinois, 1941. The woman in the foreground is walking away from the church, off the sidewalk, elegantly dressed in a dark fur coat, hat, stockings, heels, and clutch purse. Behind her are other well-dressed men and women standing outside the church door in suits, hats, and coats. A young teen appears to hold a stack of newspapers in the direction of the men closest to him. Idlewild Resort, located in northwestern Michigan, was known as Black Eden. Idlewild was the largest and most legendary resort specifically made for black travelers. It was a magnet for tourists and celebrities. Charlie's Sandwich Shop in Boston, a white-owned business, was listed in the Green Book for 15 years because it served black patrons in the city's mostly white South End. Above Charlie's was the meeting site for the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, the first black trade union in the United States. Porters commanded respect in the black community, and their travels exposed them to information across the country, making them valuable sources of knowledge about safe travel. Journey to and from the South. Now let's travel to the South. Those who had left the South had often left loved ones behind. Victor's wife, Alma, was from Richmond, a city governed by people proud of its Confederate past. Driving to Richmond for family gatherings meant encountering the racial realities of the South. Like so many others, the Greens needed guidance on how to travel safely. Cars provided a level of safety, sanctuary, and freedom in travel for African Americans, particularly as compared with trains, where black travelers were humiliated by being crowded into dirty and uncomfortable cars. The Green Book was an invaluable tool for reuniting black Americans with their loved ones. It pointed out where it was safe to travel and get services with dignity. Travelers knew to drive with a full can of gas, auto repair tools, portable toilets, blankets that doubled as partitions for makeshift roadside restrooms, spare fuses and light bulbs, and ice coolers filled with food, and shoebox lunches of eggs, sandwiches, and fried chicken. There is an interactive display that shows all of the items that needed to be packed in the trunk of a car in order to travel as safely as possible. There is a large photo of a group of 6 African Americans, most likely a family, standing at the rear of a vehicle on the side of the road. The car has luggage and bundles and parcels stacked on the roof and trunk, tied to the car by rope. A man stands by the driver's side, looking away from the camera, a young-looking female in a light-colored dress and hat to his side. To her right is a young boy in a short-sleeved dress shirt with a tie, slacks, and a straw hat tilted to the side. To the right rear side of the car is a young woman wearing a wide-brimmed hat and print dress. Then to her right are 2 young men wearing dress shirts, suspenders, and slacks. But many black travelers were not able to find accommodations. There is a black and white photo of a black man sleeping on a blanket on the ground with most of his body under a large 8-wheeler truck in June 1940. The caption tells us that there are no sleeping accommodations for Negroes at this service station on US 1. People also came to the South for beaches. The black beaches listed in the Green Book illuminate a segment of black life not often seen in the African American story. Families, friends, lovers, and entertainers putting aside worry and enjoying a vacation like anyone else. But unlike beaches for white Americans, the so-called colored beaches were seldom supported by local authorities and were not maintained to basic safety and health standards. Even at the beach, black Americans were at greater risk of harm simply because they were black. There is a photo of 4 young African American women on Carr's Beach, formerly a segregated beach located near Annapolis, Maryland, dressed in pedal pushers and summer dresses. They pose smiling next to a light-colored Cadillac. A carnival or fair is in the background. Another photo shows a group of African Americans of different ages in swimsuits, leaning against a counter at the Virginia Key Beach Park concession stand in Miami. But black travelers in the South had to anticipate that if they were driving a nice car, the presumption in many places would be that they had stolen it. There is a display case with a chauffeur hat, a dark green hat with a patent leather banded brim held by shiny gold buttons on each side. For a traveling family, a chauffeur's hat could be a useful prop in an interaction with a racist police officer. If pulled over, black men would claim the car they drove was in fact their boss's. They were just a chauffeur, a servant. The women and the children, just taking the boss's help home after a long day. Some of the most famous and successful entertainment venues in the country were in the South. Charlie's Place was a legendary nightclub in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Some of America's greatest musicians performed there: Etta James, Fats Domino, Count Basie, and James Brown. In 1950, the Ku Klux Klan shot up Charlie's Place and destroyed the inside with baseball bats. The owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, was kidnapped and beaten, but lived. Dookie Chase was a New Orleans restaurant listed in the Green Book from 1947 to 1964. The restaurant began as a sandwich shop and bar, but also provided check-cashing services to black customers. There were no black-owned banks, and black people living along the Mississippi could not easily find a place to cash checks. The restaurant became one of the most famous African-American fine dining restaurants in the country, and a hub for the community and a vital resource. The lyrics to Ray Charles's song, Early in the Morning, describe Ray coming to Dookie Chase's early in the morning looking beat and having nothing but the blues. But Dookie Chase's was also where Dr. King, Thurgood Marshall, and members of SNCC and NAACP ate Creole food and strategized about the ways to fight racism. In 1929, Geneva Hoggebrooks opened Hoggebrooks Funeral Home in Atlanta with $300. She operated it with a single hearse and a small number of employees, but she became very successful and bought Cadillacs several at a time. When a salesman at a Cadillac dealership did not recognize who she was and blew her off, the manager fired the salesman, saying, "You did not disrespect Miss Geneva Hoggebrooks." Travel in the West. Next, the exhibition takes us out west. The West is often an American symbol of new horizons and second chances. Black people often went west hoping to escape discrimination and seek economic opportunities. However, the danger Black Americans faced could be just as treacherous as the dramatic surroundings. Half of the 89 counties on Route 66 were sundown towns, all white communities that banned the presence of any black person after dark. Finding lodging, food, and a safe place to refuel could be a deadly gamble on Route 66. There were so few places Black Americans could stay on Route 66 that black drivers were getting into deadly accidents due to exhaustion. Green was dedicated to opening up more travel options for Black Americans, but for years the West had the smallest numbers of sites listed in the Green Book. Still, there were notable exceptions. Murray's Dude Ranch near Victorville, California, was a 40-acre property on the edge of the Mojave Desert. Murray's offered horseback riding, swimming, and recreation. Murray's gained popularity with celebrities like Lena Horne, Joe Louis, and Hedda Hopper. The February 1947 cover of Ebony magazine shows an African-American woman smiling while standing on white wooden fence. The woman is wearing a short-sleeved white blouse, tied at the waist, red skirt with white trim, and white sandals. In the background is a white horse standing next to the fence. Another photo shows African-American performers at Jack's Basket Room, Los Angeles, 1949. Two men in suits and ties stand on each side of a woman holding a microphone in a dark, strapless gown and smiling. Behind them are 6 band members playing multiple instruments. Jack's Basket Room, also known as Jack's Chicken Basket, was a popular Green Book site opened in the heart of South Central Los Angeles in 1939. Owned by Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight boxing champion, the Basket Room hosted the nation's top entertainers and served the black upper class. Clifton's Cafeteria was a restaurant on Broadway in downtown Los Angeles, a sprawling 5-story place at the end of Route 66. The original owner, Clifford Clinton, was a white man and the son of Christian missionaries. He never turned anyone away and created the Cafeteria Golden Rule. His menu said, "Pay what you wish," and "Dine free unless delighted." This was a hard sell to Clinton's business partners, but they eventually accepted his business model and the restaurant was profitable. Clinton couldn't understand how America, a country with so much wealth, could allow citizens to go hungry. The Green Book as a tool of hope. The Green Book was a tool of hope for Black Americans and played many parts in the country's efforts to end segregation and extend civil rights to all. The guide was fueled by a vision and a wish that seemed improbable, that Black people in America could experience dignity, comfort, and safety as they navigated the world. Businesses listed in the Green Book were among the most significant locations identified with the civil rights movement. Without safe places to plan, strategize, debrief, and recuperate, civil rights leaders of the 1950s and 60s would have failed to push social justice forward in America. From hotels to beauty shops, these places became the headquarters for holding America accountable to its promise of liberty and justice for all. The Dunbar Hotel in Los Angeles was the first American hotel built expressly for Black people and became the social and cultural hub for the Black intelligentsia, with W.E.B. Du Bois, Billie Holiday, and Duke Ellington as regulars. Civil rights leaders made it their headquarters. The Lorraine Motel in Memphis was a popular Green Book site and favorite of Black musicians and athletes. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed standing outside his room at the hotel, and the owner's wife, Larry Bailey, suffered a fatal stroke when she heard the shot. The A.G. Gaston Hotel in Birmingham is where Dr. King planned the protests in that city. The owner, Mr. Gaston, supported civil rights, but he was skeptical of King's confrontational methods until he saw the fire hoses Bull Connor used on black children. Gaston bailed Dr. King out of the Birmingham jail after King wrote his famous letter. The owner of Motel Simbeth, Modjeska Simpkins, hosted King, Thurgood Marshall, and others, and was considered the matriarch of civil rights activists in Columbia, South Carolina. The Hampton House in the Brownsville area of Miami was owned by a Jewish couple and was a center for black musicians. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the leaders of CORE met there, and King practiced his "I Have a Dream" speech at the hotel. At the Hotel Ben Moore in Montgomery, MLK held secret meetings on the roof planning the bus boycott. Victor Green wrote this in the introduction to the Green Book. There will be a day sometime in the near future when this guide will not have to be published. That is when we as a race will have equal opportunities and privileges in the United States. It will be a great day for us to suspend this publication, for then we can go wherever we please and without embarrassment. Victor Green did not live to see the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed. He died in 1960, and the last issue of the book was published by his wife and their staff for the years 1966 and 1967. In the last Green Book for 1966 and 67, there was recognition of the success of the civil rights movement. In a section called Your Rights, Briefly Speaking, there was a list of organizations fighting for civil rights, including CORE, SNCC, and the NAACP, and pictures of 5 members of Congress called Rights Guardians. The article then outlined anti-discrimination laws in 30 states with information about what to do and whom to contact if the laws were violated. There was also a full-page advertisement for Langston Hughes's Fight for Freedom, a history of the NAACP. History travels with us, legacy and preserving sanctuary. Sadly and ironically, the very success of the civil rights movement meant not just the end of the Green Book, which Victor Green had hoped would be the case, but also the end of many of the businesses that had been listed in the books. In less than a decade after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, at least half of the Green Book's black-owned businesses were closed through government programs like urban renewal, in which black communities were disproportionately disrupted and destroyed. The entrepreneurial hopes of many black citizens were dashed. Also, as public space became more integrated, black businesses had to compete with larger, better-funded, white-owned businesses that had the favor of police, policymakers, bankers, and politicians. This reality left black-owned businesses with few resources and little leverage. As more black travelers patronized white businesses, black businesses lost the support they relied on, and many struggled to keep their businesses open. It was a no-win situation. If black travelers took their money elsewhere, it hurt their community. Yet, if they didn't go to those places and show white Americans they deserved to be there like anyone else, the country was never going to change. In the years after his death, Dr. King's name began to adorn street signs at the center of black neighborhoods, once populated with Green Book businesses. Today, research suggests that communities on avenues named after Dr. King correlate with higher rates of crime, poverty, and poor health compared to the surrounding areas. Dr. King's name has now become both a symbol of hope celebrated across the world and the marker of decline and decay. His is now like the other names that once signaled the potential of the black community: the Savoy, the Dunbar, Idlewild, Alberta's, Murray's, lost yet somberly remembered, gone but now serving as a lesson for us all. Georgia Ayers, a community activist, summed it up this way in 2015. We got what we wanted. but we lost what we had. While the vast majority of Green Book sites have been destroyed or left to decay, a handful of businesses have survived. Community efforts, government intervention, and individual support have been invested to restore a few of these historic sites to their former glory. Black entrepreneurship has continued. The 2010 census calculated that there are nearly 2 million Black-owned businesses in America. The A.G. Gaston Motel in Birmingham, Alabama, is now designated as a National Historic Monument. The Lorraine Motel in Memphis failed, briefly became a house of prostitution, and then was rescued by a group of activists. It is now the National Civil Rights Museum, an affiliate of the Smithsonian. Hampton House in Miami, Florida, was reopened in 2015. How many fewer Black entrepreneurs would there be without the legacy of African American businesses that is captured in the Green Book? Victor Green's guide provides both inspiration and reflection, allowing us to celebrate past glory and meditate on the implications of racial justice and equality in the United States of America. Thank you for listening to this audio tour. To learn more about this compelling history, read Candacy Taylor's Overground Railroad, The Green Book, and the Roots of Black Travel in America, which is available at D.C. Public Library.